The Woman Who Follows Me. In December of 2005, I got home from work late about 10 p.m. My mother and my children were asleep. I quietly got my things ready for bed and went to take a shower. And when I was done, I opened my bathroom door to go to my room, which was directly across the hall from the bathroom. The living room itself was to the right of the bathroom, and the whole house was dark. When I took a step into the hallway, I heard a loud woman's voice coming from the living room, and all she said was, "Hello, hello." Her voice was soft but loud, and she almost sang the words almost. I don't know. I stood about 2 seconds in the hallway and went directly into my bedroom and shut my door. My grandmother has always told me that when you hear an unfamiliar voice, a spirit, you are to never answer, because that is an invitation to come to you, and you are never to act scared. So I did what my grandmother said, and decided to walk straight through to the living room in the dark to retrieve my phone charger and not look any damn where, but straight ahead. I exited my room and did just that. I have no idea who was in my living room that night or what she wanted. Throughout the years since then, that same woman, as I can tell by her soft voice, has visited me on many occasions. She never tries to frighten me, I believe, but she wakes me up sometimes by speaking close to my ear in a low tone. It seems like she does this when I'm going through a rough time. She also has called my name loudly and still occasionally says hello. I never responded to her, but the weird thing is that I have moved to 7 different locations in 2 different states, and she is still with me. And I guess she will always be. Something strange that happened to me 2 years ago. Just to clarify, this was something that I mind repressed for some time. Backstory: I lived in the US for about 4 years, more specifically in the South. I got a scholarship to get a college degree, and while I was living there, I had host parents which took care of me during spring break and Christmas break. After I graduated, I went back to my home country. 5 years later, I went to visit them. Since they were so awesome with me, I wanted to surprise them with my visit. It was December, and we were having a great time, except for one thing. They adopted a kid with a disease called reactive attachment disorder. I could feel that something was wrong with that kid, but due to privacy, I won't share more details about that kid. Except for the strange thing that happened with him. My host parents live out in the country. The house itself is at the side of the road, but it is kinda isolated, your typical southern house. One night, I decided to sleep on the couch, like I used to do back in college. Everybody was about to go to bed, except for my host dad. He had to put the adopted kid to sleep, and also had to set up the alarm. Due to this kid's illness, there was an alarm system in place that activated if someone opened the door or the window. When everybody went to bed, I turned on my laptop to see a movie. I was 5 minutes into the movie when I heard through my headphones, "What are we watching tonight?" I freaked out, looked around, and no one was there. I knew it was him because I recognized his voice. Now, after calming myself, I decided to turn off my laptop and pretend that didn't happen. And when I looked to the front door, and there he was standing outside, looking directly at me with his eyes wide open, and with this weird smile on his face. Now me, being that coward that I am, screamed like a little girl and hid under my blanket. My host parents woke me up and asked me what happened. I told them they wanted to check out the alarm system, which was working. The kid was sleeping, but I know what I saw, and I know it was him. Next day, I checked into a hotel in the city. For some odd reason, I felt like I was not welcome there anymore. Hope someone can shed some light on this. I am not crazy. Well, I'm thinking, this is some Reddit creepy story. This really happened, is not that. And after 2 years, I can't explain that experience. Something wore my friend's face like a costume. Last December, a very good friend came to visit after having moved to Australia recently. She stayed in my family's home with us for roughly 3 weeks in our spare bedroom. She stayed in the empty bedroom in our basement, and I slept in my room 1 floor up. Everyone has creepy shit happen to them in the middle of the night, in the dark hours where there isn't another soul awake in the neighborhood. But this happened around 6 in the morning. The sun was rising. There was light creeping into my bedroom through the blinds. Creepy things aren't supposed to happen in the morning, when it's quiet and light outside. I woke up because I heard music. It was playing quietly, so that I could not discern a melody or a specific song, but it sounded like a contemporary pop song, like something that would have been on the radio. I woke up groggy and saw my best friend, standing just a few feet from my bed. She was holding her phone in its exact yellow case, and I assumed she was waking me up for the morning. The music kept coming, seemingly from her phone. I didn't have a radio anywhere in my room, so it was the only possible source. I asked her what was up, and she just stared at me, face completely unchanging, and then she was gone. The music stopped, and she was gone, like she'd never been there to begin with. I was completely awake at this point, and my heart was starting to pound. I called out to her because it didn't make sense for her to be gone like that. She was only there a minute ago, a second ago. My room was still pretty dimly lit for how early it was, and I sat up in bed, peering around the room. I somehow had the thought that she was just messing with me for some reason. It wasn't like her to play weird games like that, but what else could she be doing? I was thoroughly unnerved, but I'd given up and was about to lay back down when I saw her again. She appeared very suddenly, standing at the foot of my bed, phone in hand. The music had started again, soft, but undeniably there. I jumped, startled, and just as I opened my mouth to ask what she was doing, she was gone. Again. My heart was hammering in my chest, and all I could think to do was beg her to stop whatever she was doing. I had to fight to say the words. My voice was shaking and my throat was tight. This wasn't normal. This wasn't okay. This wasn't my friend. My dog, who sleeps on the floor near my bed, had woken up and was watching me with his ears up, attentive and calm. The fact that he showed no signs of distress or confusion rattled me to the core, and I ran out of my bedroom before the thing could come back again. I collapsed on the bathroom floor down the hallway, shaking more than I'd ever had in my life. I remember how much my chest hurt, how fast my heart was going. I could hear it pounding in my ears like I'd been running for my life. My dog ambled into the bathroom and pressed his head into my legs. He was still calm, like nothing ever happened, but he must have been able to tell something was wrong with me, because normally he ignores whenever I get out of bed or not. I sat there, fingers buried in his fur, shaking for a long time. When I could feel my legs again, I went to the living room and sat on the couch for the rest of the morning, waiting for the rest of my family to get up. Once it was a reasonable hour, I went downstairs into the spare room where my friend was staying. She was still asleep. I sat on the bed next to her, and she woke up greeting me with a "good morning." I told her I had a question, and that I was going to sound really weird. I asked her if she'd been in my room earlier, that it was fine, but I'd woken up and she'd been standing there. She got this really confused look on her face, brow furrowed like she couldn't get her head around the idea, and was adamant that she'd been in the spare room all night, asleep. I didn't make the connection until a day or two later, but once I realized it was there, I've been on edge to be in my very own bedroom, alone. See, every few months, I wake up in the middle of the night. Someone sits on my bed. I very clearly feel the mattress depressed next to me. I sit up to see who it is and what they want, assuming it's a family member or something, and there is no one there. This had happened about 3 different times in the months prior to my friend's visit. There's something in my room. I don't know what it wants. My death experience and what happened when I tried DMT 30 years later. So, a few things. I've experience with mushies, LSD, and other stuff, so I know what a trip is and how wonderful they are. I'm also not religious at all. 30 years ago, I had an accident that resulted in me being transported to hospital in an ambulance in a critical condition. I mean, I was dying for real. I was crying. At that moment, I remember the words, "irregular heartbeat," and I just went to sleep. Even till this day, I like to believe that I died that day. They were just dark for a while, I remember, and then it just transformed into a stunning forest, full of ferns and big, giant sequoia pines. I wasn't aware of my body anymore. It was welcoming and actually felt positive. I'll skip some of the finer details and say, I saw a path ahead. I knew that it was just for me, a path just for me. As it started, where I was standing, it went straight ahead and ended in a round area that was not there before. I was at the end and a light came down it, also bright and the most intense feeling of unconditional love and understanding that I've ever felt. At that moment, I can't really put into words how big a deal with this feeling. It was an emotion, and I don't think it exists here. I spoke to the entity in the light, and I remember getting answers as well. I'm skipping details to keep it short, you know. Eventually, I woke up in the ICU sometime later, put into surgery, and then in hospital for a few weeks as well. When I got out, things got better. Like total life reversal better. I felt inner peace, I think. And this drive. I got so motivated, it was incredible, like something just coming out of me that I wanted to prove something. I got motivated, went back to high school as a mature age student. I even went to college. I lived life better. I had no doubt from that day on, there was more after life. There was definitely more after death. I never tried to convince others or, be that dude, like, oh yeah, I saw the light, yeah, I'm enlightened. I never tried being that, but in my mind, in my soul, deep inside, I knew it. So, in fact, prior to this, I haven't said a word about it in like 30 years. It was like a reserve I could draw on in life. So, some 30 years later after that incident, I get to try DMT for the first time. I heard you communicate with entities in some ways, and it was a really positive and special experience. I packed a full cone full with some unsure how much to take. I had read about it for years and years and was really keen to go far in this whole thing. As I blew out the last toke, it was as if I could see all the atoms vibrating. To make something solid, I just had to close my eyes. Now, I'll skip some bits or else it'll just get way too long. But I met 3 entities, communicated all last 2 were special. Entity 2 was like in a 2D form, very flat. There were others as well, but one came very close, and I can still picture it in my head at this very moment as I write this. We talked, and it made a long rectangle box, and there were stripes that moved up and down it. I was somehow communicating some way with the being, and it was slowly pushing the box into what I suppose was my right side, but I was not aware of having a body at that moment. Thing is, my mind is clear, so I know it's not just me tripping. Whatever this thing was, it loved me, it felt like, and this was some real stuff. The next bit blew me away. The last entity I felt before I saw it, but when I did, I was overcome with emotions of happiness and joy. I'm 48 years old, and I think I've cried like 4 times in my whole adult life. So for the past 30 years, I've only cried like 4 times. But fuck, I just couldn't stop crying. It presented itself like a beautiful translucent shape filled with a like living purple of something inside. When it did, at that moment, I had the realization I had known this entity for an eternity. It was the same unconditional love and the unconditional happiness feeling from the first experience without of a doubt. When we communicated, it said it was the same thing as when I was 18 years old, and for me not to worry. This emotional feeling was just so intense to me. No hallucination I've ever had with drugs, and I've tried some drugs, could have conveyed meaning and emotions like the way that this being in front of me was doing at this exact moment. I've tripped on a lot of drugs, but this was communication on a higher level. I must sound crazy right now, but I had a straight mind, if that makes sense. No apparent cognitive effects from DMT at all. I accepted what I was being told when I saw the same forest again in my head, like, look, see? It was me that did that. It was nuts. At that moment, I had tears streaming down my face. I mean, what the fuck? It must have looked crazy to my friend. I understood. I had known this being forever. It showed me somehow that it stayed that side this time. It was like we talked about old times together. And I have an image of like old boots and docks, ships. I got the impression that we had spent this time together. It was the same being as when I died that day, 18 years old. There are tons more with this entity, but I'll leave it there. When the effects had worn off, there was the inner peace feeling again. Worry had gone. It felt like a refresh, a total refresh. It gave guidance to my life. I felt happier now, more so than I'd ever been. I have no idea what it was all about, but I have no doubt it was the real deal. I sound nuts, but fuck, that shit was good for the soul, you know? The entity in DMT was the same I'd experienced when I died, I believe. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I simply had an experience I wanted to share. Multiple shadow people in rural Tennessee. My 30-year-old has been plagued with shadow people for years. The most bizarre incident occurred in December. My son-in-law was driving, and she was in the passenger seat. There was a lonely stretch of rural road in Findlay, Tennessee, late at nighttime. Now, there were no other drivers around for miles and miles. And after driving a bit, she began noticing black entities every now and then, and thought maybe she was just tired or her eyes were just acting up. This gave her notice to figure out what it was, so she decided to focus better the next time it happened. And about 20 seconds later, what she observed panicked her. She saw that, on both sides of the road, the headlights caught a group of 6 or 7 shadow people. As soon as the car neared them, they would all quickly flit away. She asked her husband at that moment if he noticed anything odd or out of the ordinary at all, especially on the road, and he said no, but asked why. Now, he himself doesn't believe in the paranormal unless it only happens to him personally. She didn't want him to laugh at her, so she said, "Oh, nothing. I must be tired is all." As they drove, she began timing the sightings and found that for every 20 seconds, different groups of these things would appear out of nowhere. And this process went on for about 10 minutes, until the last time when a shadow person the size of a toddler, with a very large head, was crawling on all fours across the middle of the road. It turned and looked at the car, as she felt like it saw her. At that moment, it got on its feet and ran into the fields, and as if on cue, the rest merely flitted away into the air.